Welcome. You are at the CCC.
Where there are no outside issues with Bonnie Violet. Oh, yeah, and that's me. I'm Bonnie Violet. She, her are my pronouns. I'm a trans, femme, genderqueer, spiritual drag artist, identity doula, and digital chaplain.
My name's Anthony. I'm a 6-year doctoral student in clinical psych. I have a cat dad. Wait, I am a cat dad. And I care about you.
Yes, and I am Lulu. I'm your Black gay Virgo man living in the DuBose Triangle of San Francisco. It's important to distinguish that. I am a retailer by day, and yes, a former Miss Castro Country Club. I'm self-proclaimed. I'm funny and spiritual, in recovery for alcohol and crystal meth, and I am in search of balance.
Balance.
Yes, and each week we will provide and create a brave space where we engage in conversation around topics of recovery.
Absolutely, and our intention is to inspire and hold better spaces for people in recovery.
But before we do that, like, share, comment, subscribe, tell your friends about us.
Ding that bell.
Yes, turn on the notifications.
Ding the bell.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Ding, ding.
How's everyone?
Well, you're looking at me, so I'll start. I'm good. I just celebrated 13 years of continuous sobriety last Friday.
Congratulations.
Woohoo, welcome to the 13 Club.
It's funny because folks are like, well, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? I'm all, you know what? I always say, I don't need a cookie for doing what I should have been doing all along.
Mm-hmm.
Don't get me wrong. I will, I think it's important to pat yourself on the back for your accomplishment, but it's like, honestly, the way that I celebrate is by continuing to do the right thing.
Yeah. Well, I think I remember, like, I think after your first year, it's all about, letting people see that it's possible. I remember, like, when early on in recovery, I had one sponsor that would make me go to meeting every day for like a week and announce that, like, how much time I had, just as a way to kind of show people that recovery is possible.
Oh yeah, there's still some meetings I haven't gone and raised my hand. It's like I'm enjoying my week. It's kind of like birthday month, except it's birthday week.
Right.
Yeah.
You don't get all like you don't get like weird feelings or anything around anniversaries or anything. You don't get squirrely or like, I don't know, sentimental or anything like that.
Usually around my belly button birthday, I get really I have this really weird adverse reaction to privilege. I turn into a real bitch. It's weird. We'll talk about it another time.
Yeah, I'm like trying to figure out what that means.
Well, how about you? How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good.
Did we go to the last week?
It was like, I was going to talk about
no,
Harry
okay,
Potter.
Yeah,
Harry Potter was amazing. You know what I forgot to say in the beginning? I'm an addict and an alcoholic. What happened? I just forgot those things.
I did not know
but I'm an addict and an alcoholic, just in case you were wondering. I'm good. Harry Potter was amazing. Thank you so much for taking me.
Thanks for going. It's like I didn't take you paid.
Yeah, I know I paid, but like you invited me because you won those tickets. So that was really cool.
Yeah.
What else? Today I celebrated my friend's birthday. We played a bunch of games. It was really nice.
Nice.
How about you, Bonnie?
Nice. What about me?
Yeah. How are you?
I'm good.
How are you? And where are you?
I'm in soggy Boise, Idaho. The sun is starting to come out, but it's been raining all day. But yeah, that's where I'm at.
Very nice.
And you're good.
I know, right? No, I'm good. Yeah, I'm good.
Right.
I've been just chilling here, hanging out with the pup today. Didn't get out and do much, so you're the first people I'm talking to.
Yeah, that's always been the thing with the podcast. Bonnie is the cool one.
Yeah, Bonnie's
the cool one.
Bonnie is so
she's all smooth, and I'm like a complete wreck. And Bonnie's like, yeah, okay.
And I'm upset. So should we transition to today's topic?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, so today we're going to be talking about fear in all of its forms. We talked a little bit about fear last week. Was it last week? It doesn't matter. There's fear in a lot of things.
Yeah, it comes up all the time.
So I did some homework again.
I love that.
As a way to kind of launch us off here. So I looked up the word fear, and its origins are in Middle and Old English, and it comes from words meaning calamity or sudden attack. Yeah. What do you think about that?
I can relate.
A lot more.
You want more?
Well, I can
more
relate to the
calamity?
sudden attack part.
Okay.
The
okay.
calamity, like, I'm not sure about that, but definitely a sudden attack because that's how fear shows up, like without any warning.
Are
Right.
those just synonyms or synonyms? Syn- synonyms?
Synonyms?
Because I don't feel like that's like the definition.
There are oreganos.
No.
Boom.
So it's the origin of the word. So in this case, it's
Gotcha.
Middle and Old English. And then I was looking up because, okay, so I answered your question. The other thing I wanted to say is that I looked up the word courage, and the origins of the word courage, they date back to the 1300s. Yeah, and it means heart.
Okay.
Heart, yeah. So one could interpret that as to have courage is to use one's full heart.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
I like
Right.
that.
Which taps into what Lulu always talks about, that vulnerability. Hashtag Brene Brown.
Yeah.
Hashtag we've been endorsing her a lot.
You know what? We're gonna have to have a show.
Well, she is one of us, isn't she?
Yes, exactly. We're gonna have to show on Daring Greatly because that's a book that we're reading right now. Daring Greatly, like
Maybe we can get her on the show.
oh, how
We've
nice,
been wanting to bring in folks, like
nice for that, babe.
celebrity folks, huh?
Yeah. Okay, so I was also thinking, I'm just trying to bring us back. So I was also thinking about like what is the function of fear, right? So one of the first things that comes up for me when I think about fear, like the easiest thing that I can point to, last week we talked about character defects or those behaviors that no longer serve us. And what I was thinking is, in those moments when I'm acting from that place, from one of these character defects, it is very likely that I'm acting from a place of fear. Because if I follow that through, if I'm not to act out on those things, I'm, at least in my case, I'm assuming that something's going to take care of me. I don't have to act out on this thing because something's going to take care of me.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
I was thinking like fear. Fear is kind of like, Spider-Man has this tingling, the sense, and based on the second origin, whatever, if in the I suppose in the way that fear can work with you is like it alerts you to kind of like when you're walking down a dark alley or in a situation, it will, something's up. It's like I better do something different.
Right.
But the problem is, it's just like with self-medication.
Yeah.
We don't know when to stop, and sometimes if you're not careful, it can be paralyzing, and then it causes you to act in ways that are counter, to what works for you.
Yeah. What's interesting about what you're saying is what you're describing is actually, I think the term is precortical, which means that like your body is responding without thinking about it.
Absolutely.
Right. And so I think that's the tricky thing about fear is that sometimes we might be having a reaction to a situation without realizing why we're having that reaction.
Well, I think that we're pretty fortunate in recovery because of the work that we're doing. Because I think that if you are not putting yourself in a place where you're aware or you're talking about fear and what fear really means, because like when we were thinking of this, it's like we had this conversation about the title, and we came up with just fear. But there's so many different ways to approach it because in recovery we have all of these different little sayings like fear as an acronym. Face everything and recover. I use personally for me, I use false evidence appearing real, and or fuck everything and run. I don't use fuck everything and run, but sometimes that's
I
what.
do.
Okay, well that's what. And for me, like I use the fear, false evidence appearing real because anytime I'm in that place, I'm all thinking, wait a minute, what's going on here? This is just a feeling that I'm feeling, and then I get what brings me right back to the present. Aside from prayer is this is what's going on. I am not like paying attention to what's really happening as opposed to freaking out about what I think is going to happen and it hasn't happened yet.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I think the thing about fear, though, I mean, I think it is a gift, and I think especially as like people in recovery or people who are sober, oftentimes our substance use kind of kept us from being afraid, and I think in those situations, I know for me, I put myself in some very not so great circumstances in which fear would have really benefited me. So I think that's kind of a gift of being sober is that I get to fear today. I get to notice that there's something that might come out, you know what I mean? Like there's something to be aware of, but it is also important to remember that, that like I'm going to be taken care of, and there's nothing really I need to be afraid of.
Yeah, I certainly, yeah, I definitely agree with that. There's something about fear that teaches us or shows us what's important to us, right? So if I'm in a situation and I don't know, what's a typical fearful situation? Well, there's so many situations, and I can't think of one situation where I've been fearful. I do know actually one situation. So I have a lot of like trepidation, as you both know, around social media, just in general. And there's this way that if for example, when you're on your phone on Facebook, I look away because I'm terrified about what I might see, not anything personal.
Okay,
right?
yeah.
Anyway, I'm giving this example to say that
I curate my just to let you know, I curate my Facebook in a way that I am very particular. Like I block stuff that I don't want to see. I can see kittens all day.
Yeah.
I don't have to see shit.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh no, that's great. So what I think that tells me about myself, this reaction, what it tells me is that I value, say, peace of mind, or I value whatever it is. Like I value myself enough to move away from whatever this thing
Also,
is.
maybe it's a blessing in disguise because there's something that you still need to work on.
Right. No, for sure. And there's definitely something that gets triggered by social media for sure. Yeah. Yeah. There was also one other thing that I wanted to say, going back to false evidence appearing real. I was thinking about that on my way here and thinking that there's a way I think that sometimes we pathologize fear in 12 step, where it's this thing, at least in my experience, where it's this thing that we're not supposed to have. And if we have it, there's something wrong with us.
I was thinking about that.
Yeah,
and you're right.
Right. And it's, I don't know, there's just something about that seems not nuanced, and I understand that the steps are written such that, we're not supposed to kind of, because at least the addict alcoholic mind is so good at piecing things apart and twisting them. So it's safer to say, no, this is bad, we should not do it.
I had started writing this down, like you were saying something about fear being a gift. And there's this quote, and I don't know where it comes from, but it says, to fear God is the beginning of wisdom. And so I struggled with that for the longest time, but I kind of understand, especially if I just take the God part away, to fear is the beginning of wisdom. Because if I walk around with no fear, then I'm leaving myself open for all sorts of kind of things to kind of occur, you know what I'm saying? So I think that maybe there is there definitely is a benefit to fear, to a right amount of fear,
Right.
and but not letting it kind of take over you.
Yeah, and I mean, I think if you're experiencing fear in a not so great way, I mean, I think, in like spiritual recovery, or you tapping into spirituality for recovery, a good question is like, why am I afraid if I have a higher power, or I have God, or is there a way that I can, give this to, let go and let God, or let go and whatever, in order to kind of work through this, and sometimes that can be helpful, or go to, if you will, the principles or whatever, to kind of get a sense and to be able to evaluate more of what this fear is coming from, so that you can begin to do the work. We talk about fear of economic insecurity, fear of people, fear of, those are things that are in the promises that in a 12-step recovery that say come from, going through the steps, in particular the 9 step.
Yeah, that's really interesting. There's this way that I think that, ever since the period of enlightenment, we've privileged thinking, right? Everything is about thinking and being rational. And before then, people were generally very spiritual, and they looked at symbols, and they were more in touch with, a spiritual realm of being. Of course, this is a kind of a Western idea. And so we've gotten to this place now where we are constantly thinking. I think Eckhart Tolle, he says, Eckhart Tolle says that the addiction that we don't really talk about is the addiction to thinking, right? The addiction to thinking.
Some people are not addicted to thinking.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that's one of the hard things about being sober, is that sometimes it's too painful to be present, and so we find these ways to disassociate. you know, and
Well, I
whatever.
mean, I think that was the reason why we used. I mean, it was too like I said, too painful. I think that uh, what I what I've been working on, or what I feel like I've been working on, is kind of sitting with that discomfort, sitting with that pain, and accepting that in every lesson, rain got to fall,
Mhm.
and I'm not always supposed to feel good, and that's not what recovery is about for me now. Recovery is about me understanding that this is all things that don't kill you just put hair on your chest to make you stronger.
Right.
If you want it there. And Dominique has said fear of change.
Oh,
Um,
we all do. It's like
I fucking hate change.
there's so much change
though,
going
though
on
I
now.
want it like no other.
Well, that's the weird thing, because it's like there's change that you want, and then but it requires, like, you can't just change this. Everything has to change around it, and it sucks, because it's like you want things to stay the same. And like with relationships with people, relationships with friends. Like I always tell people to look for their tribe of people when they come in.
Mhm.
But we're growing and changing constantly. And when I came in, the folks that I came in with, we were silly and just whatever. And they went that way and I went this way. And there are times where I wish I still had that. But you know what? I have a different version of it now, with people who are solid and who are moving, we're in the direction that I'm going in now. And, as much as I want things to stay the same, they don't. Hmm.
Right.
I'm just having a moment. Yeah.
Yeah. We'll have it.
No, okay.
I'm also thinking about, I think it's the Buddhists that believe that suffering is just part of the human condition. I think it's one of the 3 or 4 tenets. Um, when I think about suffering in that way, or fear resulting in suffering, one of the more comforting things that I do or think to myself is like, this thing that I'm experiencing is the thing that unites me to all human life, right? And even not just human life, but life in general. Animals fear.
Yeah.
Um, and then the other thing I was thinking of is, this is like an earlier thought, is that like the brain itself, like the prefrontal cortex, which is the front of our brain, it's the one that like reasons and stuff. That's actually the youngest part of our brain. And the oldest part of our brain is like more toward the center in the limbic system.
Uh-huh.
And the reason why I'm sharing that is because like in the front of our brain, it's the youngest part of our brain. It's where we're doing our thinking, but it's really young. But this other part of us is so old. It's been there since the very beginning. And it's the one thing that I think we ignore a lot. It's that like when we have certain feelings, or we have a certain intuition that kind of comes up, a lot of times, at least for me, I ignore that. And I think the reason why I ignore that is because I think, no, I have to be this rational being.
Mm.
So there's almost like a conflict between like being a rational being and being a spiritual being. Like this maybe belief that those two things can't exist at the same time.
Well, that's our humanity, right? That's what makes us human.
Mm-hmm.
You had brought up courage, kind of, I think, as a response into fear, and courage is not without fear. And so I have a song that I wanted to just read the lyrics to, that I love to go to. It's by a group called The Strange Familiar, and it's called Courage Is. And it's a little long, but I'm gonna do it. It says, "Take all my vicious words and turn them into something good. Take all my preconceptions and let the truth be understood. Take all my prized possessions, leave only what I need. Take all my pieces of doubt and let me be what's underneath. Courage is when you're afraid, but you keep on moving anyway. Courage is when you're in pain, but you keep on living anyway." There's more to it, but I'll just stop
Oh,
there.
that's amazing.
That's
Yeah.
really great. I really like that.
And I think that the work that we do in this with the steps, and again, I'm going to just disclose that I don't speak for anyone but myself.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to give anybody the impression that I'm the king of AA or anything. But the work that I'm doing, meaning facing myself, it takes courage. I mean, there was times where I feared that I wasn't enough, or that I wasn't going to be enough, that I was worthless, or what have you. But doing the work and continuing to do the work, and I always say, it's like, okay, so when you are learning to be a better version of yourself, or when you're taking chances, and it seems like, if I do this, I'm going to turn into a pillar of salt or explode or whatever, but you do it and you don't, And the more times you do it and you start to have faith that, oh yeah, this work is really, and that's where the courage for me comes,
And strength
and
develops.
the fear doesn't go away. It's just I am able to recognize the fear and address it, and not, because I think the problem was before, like the fear was there and I would react, I would fuck everything and run, as instead of face everything and recover. Yeah. So
Yeah, and one of the great things that comes from doing that kind of work is that, like, on a very kind of like fundamental level, you're laying down like new neural pathways, right?
Absolutely.
In order to replace the old ones.
Exactly. And I think that's the work that we're constantly doing, because it's like, they say it's like the only thing you have to change is everything. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
It's like when I came in, how when you first come in and your emotions are all screwed up or whatever, you're sad, but you're laughing and crying, angry, but crying or whatever. I felt like the old style operators where they had the plugs going, they were all a mess. And I just had to come in and kind of reorganize and whatever. I saw, I saw that Greg Starr is in the room. Greg, well,
oh hey, Greg.
Greg, you're wonderful. That's awesome. I'm glad you're joining us. The same with Dominique.
If for people who are just listening in, what we're doing is we're getting messages on our screen. And
absolutely, I keep forgetting to say it's like.
Oh, there was one other thing I wanted to say. Bonnie Violet, did you lose your thought?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I didn't lose it. I can jump back to it at any point. Go ahead.
Go ahead, give it to us.
No, I just had a question for the both of you.
Well, let's hear it.
So, okay, so I wanted to ask, either just to give you some comfort, either what is it that you are afraid of now, or what are some fears that you've lost from being in recovery?
I want to answer the first one.
Okay.
And I hate this is my answer, but it's like what's real for me, and it's been on my mind a lot. And in fact, when you were pulling up your phone, so I shared with both of you offline that someone told me that my ex has all these like videos and pictures of him and his like new boyfriend online, and I'm terrified of coming across them. Like, I'm terrified of like looking at someone's phone and seeing it scroll up, and I don't know what that's about. Like, I think part of that for me is like, this guy could be like a gargoyle made of wood, and I'll walk away from that situation thinking like, I want to be a gargoyle made of wood. I don't even know who this person is. And so that's the fear. I've like been holding that. I have so much anxiety around that ever since that person that I work with told me what they did.
You should have.
So would you say that you're running from that, or that how would you label that?
I don't know that I'm running from it, because I don't think it's advisable for me to like seek that out. But I do think that like my reaction the reaction I'm having is like disproportionate to what actually is.
Understood. Yeah, and I just because we were talking about that, like, I think it's not always clear when we're running or what we're running from, or at least for me.
Yeah.
And sometimes running is a great response. But yeah, I guess I was just checking in on that.
I think that for the first part of the question, so I remember talking to someone just recently and thinking to myself, well, based on like the work that I'm doing, it's like I don't think I have any like fears that stand out, but that's not true. Okay, so there's something that I do. It's like I like that show Euphoria that was on. I don't know if you know about the show. If you're not watching it, it's HBO Max.
If you're not watching it, you're not alive.
No, well, it's a very kind of realistic and kind of terrifying depiction of like drug addiction and whatever, and it just happens to take place in high school. And it's that show and others. It's like I think that I found myself, and this is the gift of being able to turn off. If I know something like uncomfortable is coming up, I will shut it off. I eventually go back and watch it, but it's because it's interesting. It's like I know that it's going to play itself out, but I have found like I'm watching the new Bel Air. It's the dramatic retelling of the Fresh Prince of Bel Air.
Oh wow!
And the latest episode, like they're having this big party, and I'm in my mind, my triggers are saying something bad is going to happen, and so I turned it off. And this used to happen to me when I was growing up. Like my friends would say somehow whenever the conversation would get too much, I would excuse myself and go to the bathroom, and I didn't know I was doing that. So it's like in some ways I'm a little more aware, but I might, that may be where my fear comes in.
But I don't know that I heard what you were afraid of
Well,
from either one of you.
of
Like, what
uncomfortable.
is it that you're really afraid of?
I don't know, just the uncomfortable
You're afraid
situation.
of being uncomfortable? Why? What are you sure there's not something more there? I mean, are you really scared of being a wooden gargoyle, or is there something more there?
Well, I'm thinking, I don't, not scared of being a wooden gargoyle, but I just know the way my brain works. And I know that I'll compare myself to this person. I don't even know who the fuck they are. I don't want to know who the fuck they are. But I know I'll compare myself, right? Like this person could be purple with 7 legs. And I'll walk away thinking like, oh, should I have had 7 legs? You know, with 7 legs would have made that
So
really.
is part of that meaning that you are not good enough,
Oh, for sure.
or that you're, you know what I mean? Like, is that the
Yeah.
deeper
Yeah.
fear, I guess?
Yeah. No, I think you're right.
Oh,
I
do
think,
me now. Do me.
yeah,
Do me.
I think,
Bonnie's letting us have
yeah,
it. It's
yeah.
like I'm all.
No, I just wanted like I know we're in this doing this together. I didn't mean to like you're wrong. I think it's helpful to try to go further because
Oh, absolutely.
it doesn't make sense. It's like, oh, I'm afraid to see you
Well,
know what I mean? Like
it's a
it just
rational fear. It's a rational. It's like neither, like both of these, because like with the
but
situation.
it's pitted like it's probably based in something,
Oh,
and that's
absolutely,
where you're gonna
absolutely.
find out.
Mm.
To some degree, you know, there are some irrational things, don't get me wrong, but I still think there's probably a nugget of something that is triggering something that is real, even if you are kind of having an irrational or a bigger response than what
Yeah.
feels is matching it.
What I know from my clinical training is that when a person has a really strong reaction that seems disproportionate to what's actually
Right.
happening, it's normally rooted in, you know, and really deep rooted trauma. Uh, and so I agree that probably the fear here is probably that, you know, I fear that I'm not enough.
Mhm.
And even
Or
even
the fear that you'll be re-traumatized again, like, right? Like,
oh
is
yeah,
that kind of what
100%.
the
Yeah, it's like the belief that like if I am exposed, I won't be able to handle it. I think a big
right?
part of this too is like I've been working so hard on like healing. I was telling my best friend yesterday, I was like, I think I'm two standard deviations from the mean with respect to my healing, because like I'm feeling much better, you know, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know where I was going with any of that.
I
But
wonder if
Yeah.
like I just wonder if like the biggest fear is the fear of being hurt, right? Like if that's like the fear of pain. And I wonder if that's like kind of a core of not everything, but a lot of things, whether it's like, yeah, that fear of hurt on whatever level, whether it's physical, emotional, you know, spiritual.
so, Brene Brown threw that
Here
in.
she
We
goes.
no, we
Who's
talked.
that? Who's her?
We talked about like a common fear that a lot of folks have is not being a part of.
Mm.
So is being outside of, and so
And is that part of just not being loved?
yeah, it's like I mean, or at least that's.
What is the one true fear? Come on,
I
let's
don't know.
figure this out.
What about you? It's like for that first part, what do you fear?
um, I think my biggest thing is probably my biggest fear is that I'm not living up to what God created me to be. You
Mhm.
know, I mean, I feel like that's always been my ultimate fear, which is not anything I should ever really be afraid of, because that's like contrary to the grace of God. You know what I mean? But for me, there's been times where that like need to try to do well and to do right and to have values can sometimes be, you know, a curse, and be something that's made life very difficult, and made me being feeling comfortable or safe or satisfied or well almost impossible, or at least difficult to experience.
Mhm.
Anna
Sorry, go ahead.
Anna Maria is saying, "I fear being alone and not enough." I yeah, I think being alone is the biggest thing for me right now.
Yeah.
And what about Greg? It's like we saw.
What did Greg say? I try to look at why I'm fearful of someone or a situation, and most of the time it's self-centered fear, which is a root of addiction. I'm learning to walk through my fears, a lifelong lesson.
Yeah, it's like,
Mm,
and again, we're reading comments that are being posted up on our little screen in case you're
right.
just listening.
Uh,
There's another
Fear of what?
comment.
another comment came in. Fear of loss, having things taken away, be it emotional or financial.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Robert, for that.
Thank you, Robert.
Fear
Fear of being judged, or fear of being homeless again. And you know what's interesting about what all of these have in common is like for me, the work that I'm doing, like I realize that as long as I stay sober, I have a chance to not fall in those things again, or if they happen, I am not going to lose it. Like you think, oh God, if this happens, my world will end. And the truth of it is that's not the case. Like most of the time it's not. You don't know what's going to happen when it happens. And I think we're doing all this work to prepare.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To the other, go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to say, well, just two things. One is I just wanted to thank the folks who've been sending us messages.
Absolutely.
It's really nice to.
You're our lifeblood.
You are our lifeblood.
Thank you.
Send
Send us a speak pipe.
Yeah. And while I'm saying this, I wanted to also say it's really nice when people come up to us and say hi, like if they see us on the street. That's happened a few times recently.
Except when no,
Yeah.
no.
Except yeah. So I just wanted to say, if you see us out in public, say hi. Well,
Yeah.
I say hi to me. I don't know how
I think
these other people feel.
Also take that as an opportunity if you don't want to go to our speak pipe or send us a message to tell us what we should be talking about.
Yeah. Okay. So going back to what I was going to say, is that okay? Was that really abrupt?
No.
Okay.
It's like,
So
I love it. It's like, come on.
one of the things I like to think about when I'm fearful is that that all human beings are fundamentally the same, and that our needs are fundamentally the same. That we all have a need to feel seen, loved, heard, and to be connected. And fear generally, I think fear blocks us from those things. And one of the things I've heard in a lot of different teachings is like one of the biggest illusions is that we are different from each other. You know, when in fact, like every spiritual and philosophical teaching that I've ever come across says otherwise. You know.
Well, I think there's difference, but we're connected.
Yeah.
Can you say more about what you mean when you say difference?
I think we each have our difference. We have common like experiences potentially, but ultimately we are connected and we are one. So your experience is mine and mine is yours. Like makes so seems like that song that I don't know that one Beatles song.
I
I
think
am you and you and me
we're all
and
spiritual. We're all spiritual, but you're right. I think that it's our diversity that kind of helps us distinguish,
Yeah.
you know, me from you. It's all good.
I think that,
I mean,
well, we all went
Right.
at once. I'll finish my thought. I think what you're describing, Ram Dass would say, Ram Dass being the spiritual teacher, that what is different in all of our paths is our life's curriculum, right? Like all the lessons that we're supposed to learn,
Uh-huh.
that is where we're different.
So the other part of the question, because it's like this is juicy. What I don't fear anymore. I don't fear, like I'm no longer afraid of being alone. I'm no longer afraid that I'm not enough completely. Like coming in and figuring out this is who I am. I'm not afraid to show people who I am because I realize that there are folks who are just not going to fuck with me because they don't fuck with me. But I've also found there are a lot of amazing people that really are they love me and support me just who I am. So I don't have to come in here and put on a performance, even though sometimes I do.
I don't yeah, and for me I think most things I probably feared when I came in, I still fear, but I fear them less often and I fear them, like I experience more relief
Yeah.
from fear and not, some of the same things can be afraid, but like I might have financial insecurities, but not every day. Like maybe a certain day of the month or a certain day of the year, but it's not. Whereas like before I got sober, I lived my whole life as if the whole world was out to get me.
Yeah.
And so I was living in nothing but fear of dying, fear of fear of me, just so many things. And I can still have those fears today, but not as often and not to the same degree and not without some sort of relief.
Yeah, I feel the same, where I feel like for a very long time, fear robbed me of so many beautiful things, and I think one of the blessings of recovery has been that despite fear, I do things. Despite fear, I'm going to make this amends, or despite fear, I'm going to admit that I have fear.
Right.
And
It's not really the fear itself, it's what you do with it.
Yeah, that's a big part of this. Just like you were
Mhm.
saying, it's like there was times before where I felt like, maybe I'm not supposed to, or it's going to make me look weak or a certain way. So I'm not going to share with you that I fear. And it's in talking about it and saying, this is it. This is where I'm at, because that's the gift. I think, we talk about the gifts of the program. That's a gift. I will not hesitate to pull someone to the side who I trust and tell them this is what's going on. And I say, maybe it's not real, maybe it's real or whatever, and then you get to talk to another individual about and maybe kind of squash it. What do they call? Okay. So it's almost like the shame resilience idea, except it's with fear, they have, yeah.
Shame resilience?
Yeah,
What is
so
it?
I don't have the complete definition, but there's different things that you can do when you are feeling shame to kind of like neutralize it. That's a good topic for us to have.
Anna says again, every day I felt like I was at war and that I had to fight for my life. Sorry, it's probably Anna Marie.
All
Maria.
my life I had to fight.
Rivera. Every day I felt like I was at war and that I had to fight for my life. Me too,
Yeah.
Anna Maria. Yeah, me too. And it's some, you know what? And in fact, on those days when, like I'm not attending to my spiritual self, I think that stuff comes up for me more
And
often.
Greg,
I really like that.
coming into recovery, I learned how to walk through my fear without knowing it. Absolutely.
Hey, I love that.
Well, it's like that thing. It's like we do the work and we have these spiritual awakenings, and we sometimes it's folks outside of us that see the change in us before we get to see it. So
How do you tend to fear?
So I love that question. I just want to make sure I'm understanding it correctly. So like when fear comes up, how do we handle fear? Is that what you're
That's
saying?
another way, yeah.
Yeah. I was just rephrasing so that I
Yeah,
get.
definitely. Yeah.
So there's this. I think I do different versions of this, but there's this meditation I learned years ago from this guru named Spring Walsham, and the meditation is basically you imagine yourself as being like Mount Everest or some solid mountain, and being that solid mountain, you think of the anxiety or the situations that are coming toward you as though they're like snow around that mountain. But you continue to return to this idea that like I am this mountain, like I am solid, I am still. Yes, I'm feeling this. Yes, this is happening, but I am solid, I am still. And you keep coming back to this idea. That's one of the things that's been really helpful for me, because normally, or in the past, what I've done is like I'll run with it, like rather than stay still, I'll start running, chasing every thought and every feeling, expecting that if I chase this feeling or I chase this thought, I'm going to find relief, and that shit never works. It never works.
Yeah.
How about you, Lou?
Well, like I said earlier, one of the things I really rely on heavily, like I take my temperature a lot.
Like actual temperature?
Well, that too, but it's
Like rectal or oral or
yeah, exactly. It's almost like the halt thing. It's like,
Oh, yeah.
I try to see where number one where I'm at in a situation, and I really rely on the false evidence appearing real. Like a situation that recently, and I shared with some. I received a letter, and if anyone knows me, it's like I've been working over the last number of years about trying to really keep my credit rating and everything together. So I received a letter and said that something was going to collections. I didn't recognize it. And so the old me would have shoved it and ignored it, said out of sight, out of mind. But what I did was I picked up the phone and I called and said, "Hey, what is this?" Because if it is mine, then I get to deal with it. And I think that blew me away, the fact that I was doing that. But it's like I kind of, I guess it's fair to say what I have been doing and what I've been doing at the beginning, and I do it much more effectively now, is having courage. Like just saying, whatever it is, I'm going to deal with it. I'm going to face it, because what I know to be true is this life that I have now and that I'm having is really, I'm enjoying it, and it's feels good. And so I've got to do everything I can to kind of sustain it.
How about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, often a thing that I come to is a saying that I actually got tattooed on my arm that says "Be still and know." And for me, I think it's kind of like you said, stillness is just being able to be still, and sometimes that's just for a second, and sometimes that's for minutes, and for me, that's often a time for me to connect with my understanding of higher power or God or whatever. And then, and then like kind of what Lulu said is, there usually is some sort of action that can be taken to, I guess work through or go through some of that fear. So maybe a combination of both of your responses.
There's this really awesome it's a type of meditation that happened. Well, it was like very many years ago when like I think it was like around Tibet, and it was frozen. There was frozen land, and what the monks would do is like, because their land was frozen, they couldn't bury the dead, so they would seclude these areas, and they would chop up dead bodies and they would put them everywhere. And then what the monks would do is they would walk through this charnel ground as a form of meditation, and they would observe the feeling of disgust and the feeling of fright. I'm bringing this up because what you're describing, like that type of stillness, there's so many different ways of practicing and getting to that type of stillness. And I think one of those ways is by observing rather than reacting to feelings, which of course is a lot easier said than done. Yeah.
I know.
Okay. It's about time for us, I think, to start saying goodbye.
Exactly. It's like, so I just want you to know, if you have any desire to reach Lulu, you can reach me at Instagram at LouieLou86.
And and you can reach Bonnie Violet on all the things at A Queer Chaplain.
That's dope. And if you want to get a hold of me, you can contact me at podcast.
Send a carrier pigeon.
Podcast at Castro Country Club.org. I'm on the fence about maybe starting an Instagram that's solely dedicated to.
You've been on that fence for a while.
Okay, well, I'm still on it.
No, that's okay. It's like, and it's absolutely fine. It's like, you send somebody to podcast at Country Club and you direct it to Anthony, and that will do that. You don't have to change for this. It's okay.
I know.
Yeah.
But I do want to work through some fear.
No, it's a good thing to work through. I think that fear, this is a conversation like that can go on and on and on. And I wanted to mention, like, please check out the Castro Country Club website. It's up and going. I mean, we've had the website before, but it has been new and improved, and they're really proud of it. It's at castrocountryclub.org. And you got a podcast, and we got some new pictures up there and our favorite episodes, and it's just really cute.
And be sure to join us each week at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on Facebook and YouTube at at the CCC. Sorry, that's the other podcast. So at the CCC, or you can listen wherever you listen to podcasts.
And we want to remind you that the Castro Country Club is a clean and sober gathering place for all people, and a home for the queer recovery community. We're located in the heart of the Castro district. That's next to DuBose Triangle.
What?
San Francisco. We endeavor to be a space where all can seek wisdom, serenity, courage, and joy.
You trying to get people to find you? Are you trying to create your stalkers?
No.
Just playing.
No, when I moved over, I was like, I'm moving to the Castro, and somebody said, "You're in DuBose Triangle." I'm all,
oh. Yeah.
Okay, whatever.
And while we're still here, I just want to thank everyone who wrote in today.
Absolutely.
And everyone who has been sharing the podcast with other people. We're seeing our numbers increase, so that's really cool. Also, like I said earlier, say hi to us if you see us.
Please do.
Yeah, if you have any ideas or things you want us to talk about, please reach out.
Yes, and I put the lyrics to that song in the comments if folks wanted to check it out. It's a cool song.
Okay, we'll see you next week.
Toodles.
Yeah.